from me, and at some point in this show, I'm going to walk in there and sit in your lap so people can see how stupid it is that you're in one room and I'm in another room.
I like the field house.
That's the truth of the matter. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Jimmy Butler loses, LeBron wins, and Zion dominates. But we begin today with Draymond Green and Kevin Durant walking into shoot-around in Houston today, chatting amiably. And then we heard finally from Draymond Green, who said among other things,
nobody in this organization, from a player, not myself, not Kevin, not anybody else, is going to beat us, So if you one of them other 29 teams in this league, you got to beat us. We're not going to beat us. This only makes Kevin, myself, and the rest of my teammates stronger. That's what it's going to do. So, you think you saw something before. Good luck with us now.
Wilbon, first, we thought it was no deal at all. Then we thought this is a really big deal. What do you think this is now?
Well, Tony, it follows a familiar script. There's controversy. It's in the media for just now, in social media and mainstream media for a couple of days. One player or the other comes out and says, this is no big deal. It's behind us. And now we're going to show you people why we don't care what you say. Outside noise, but it's not inside. That's a familiar script in American life, and particularly in sports, Tony. I was more interested in Draymond Green's comments saying, and he had said, I'm an emotional guy. I ain't changing. This is who I am. I know sometimes people get tired of it, but this works in the main for me and for us. I was more interested in that because I believe it's true.
I like Draymond Green a lot. I even like his flaws. I know he's a hothead. I know he's a bull in a china shop. But I think he has a sense truly of when he was wrong. And I don't think he thinks he was wrong here. I think that he believes he is the aggrieved party. I think that Kevin Durant is a great player. I think he's a selfless player. But, Mike, I don't think he's a great teammate. And I think in this particular case, what we could see down the road is a guy like Kevin Durant saying, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else because the people here don't love me in the way that I want to be loved. I'm not sure this is the end of the road. I think they'll win the championship. I don't even know that they'll break up next year, but if they do, I could honestly see both of them going separate ways. I could.
Well, Tony, nothing, as we know, lasts forever. Sounds cliched, but it's true. I think it could galvanize them, and that's part of also what Draymond Green was doing.
I believe they're going to win this year. I do. I think they'll win.
Tony, I want to see how they play when they get Steph Curry back, and he's still out, and he's going to be out a little longer than was initially thought. I want to see how they play and what they're fueled by, because there are going to be some nights where they got some of those Western Conference teams that are not easy to beat. So this is what we're watching, Mike. And goodness knows we will.
I'm going to be old here. I'm going to quote a Cole Porter song, or at least I think it's a Cole Porter song. And the song is just one of those things. And the line is about a love affair, and the line is this: it was too hot not to cool down. And that may be the Warriors, how great they've been.
It'll be interesting. Listen to Hughes going to, musical metaphors. So impressive, Tony, the great composers that you're familiar with. Big NFL game tonight between two recent marquee teams in the NFC. Packers at Seahawks. Not so long ago, the Seahawks were money in Seattle, particularly in prime time, but they're struggling along now at 4-5, and a loss almost surely knocks them out of real contention. But the Packers at 4-1 have their own issues, and a loss would really put them squarely behind the Bears and Vikings in their division. Tony, is the loser of this game done?
I'm not sure that they're not both done now, and you probably feel the same way. Let's just look at the Seahawks for a second. If they lose, they're done, because they're not going to be able to catch the Rams. And the wild cards, if it's Carolina, if it's Minnesota, if it's Washington, they're done if they lose this. With the Packers have a better chance because they can play Minnesota, they can play Chicago. But you know what, Mike? As great as Aaron Rodgers is, and he's great, he's got 17 touchdown passes and 1 interception. There are times he doesn't get the ball when he needs it at the end if somebody fumbles a kick return. You just look around at that team. I'm not sure there's enough around him that even if they win to do anything.
Tony, I feel that way about both these teams. I mean, there are times where Russell Wilson looks like he can, as he might have done 3 or 4 years ago, will his team. but I don't think the team is good enough for him to do that. Aaron Rodgers, we've seen with a good cast around him, as you mentioned, with a good ensemble, he's been able to run the table and go 5, 6 in a row into the playoffs. But I don't see either one of these teams doing that. I think that
so let's look ahead for a second.
Is probably out.
Let's just look ahead for a second, because both these teams could be going under some upheaval. I believe that if the Packers don't make the playoffs, that's probably it for Mike McCarthy. And he's been with Aaron Rodgers to a Super Bowl win for more than a decade now. With the passing of Paul Allen, there's going to be somebody else who's going to own Seattle. And maybe somebody's going to say to Pete Carroll, you've had enough time. Or maybe Pete Carroll's going to say, I'm out of here anyway. Maybe I'll go coach USC at this point. Yeah. I think we may be looking at change for both those teams. What do you think?
I think so. We could be talking about a double knockout. You know, that rare situation where even the winner of this game, there could be such attrition. They don't look like New Orleans, Tony.
No.
They don't. They don't. And so, you know, that's sort of the standard right now in the NFC. Hard to think of the Packers as being out. That would make me happy, though.
The Philadelphia 76ers lost last night in Jimmy Butler's debut. Butler had 14 points and 4 rebounds, but a mediocre Orlando team pulled away late and beat the Sixers. Meanwhile, the Timberwolves are 2-0 since Butler left. Karl Anthony Towns had 25 points and 16 rebounds, and Minnesota beat a good team, New Orleans. Wilbon, are there any judgments you feel comfortable making about this juxtaposition?
Not permanent ones, but the early returns would suggest, as we already thought, Karl Anthony Towns and Wiggins would just rather be free of Jimmy Butler, that they think they were chafing. Now, that's what the short-term results might suggest. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, we still got to see how the two new members, Covington and Saric, are going to fit in a longer space in Minnesota. And the Sixers, Tony, look, I expect Jimmy Butler to find his sea legs pretty quickly by, like, the next game. Again, I don't need to make a grand declaration here, but unlike some others, I think that this trade is going to be really good for Philadelphia and not so bad for Minnesota at the least.
So we spend a lot of time talking about Jimmy Butler. I am suffering from Jimmy Butler fatigue. I know you're not, because you loved him when he was with the Bulls. But I would ask you, how many championships has he won? And the answer is none. I mean, what has he truly accomplished? And the answer is he's been a pretty good player. His problem with the Sixers, and he should make them much better because he is a good player, his problem with the Sixers is not going to be him. It's going to be how Embiid and Simmons react to him. And if it gets to be a bad situation. The situation in Minnesota was toxic. They are much better without him. That doesn't mean they're a great team. It means without him, they're much better. Karl Anthony Towns, for example, 50
That's
points
his best game of
and
the year last night,
37 rebounds and shooting 64% over these 2 games. Jimmy Butler had to go there. Mike, if they both end up, let's say, finishing 4th or 5th in their conferences, it's going to look bad for Jimmy Butler, not for the other team.
Not Philadelphia, Tony. Philadelphia had better finish 4th in its conference, because 3rd or 4th, because that's how good they ought to be.
They should be.
And well, okay, so that's not.
But the other team picked up 2 good players. 2 good players, right? They picked up 2 good players.
Yeah, but let's see what Minnesota's going to struggle to make the playoffs.
We'll see.
These new players or not.
We'll see.
Speaking of, watch out. Maybe it's time to break up the Lakers. They won their 4th straight last night, winning at home against Portland. So now they've won 6 out of 7 and look efficient, if not dominant. But Rajon Rondo figures to be out at least a month with a broken hand. Tony, is that going to slow the Lakers' roll, or does LeBron's performance and the team's convince you that their biggest struggles are behind them?
Is that a delayed reaction for Rondo after punching Chris Paul in the head? Did you find out that he broke his hand? Are there troubles behind them? Not necessarily, and not just yet. But LeBron James makes every team that he plays on better. He tinkers with every team, and often, not always, but often, that team gets better. What I would tell you is significant is this. Before LeBron James got to the Lakers, I believe they had lost 16 straight games to Portland. And in the opener, this year, they lost to Portland. But beating them 2 in a row, Mike, that actually is significant because it adds to the mythology of LeBron James. What I think is at work here now is LeBron James being the tide that raises the boats on that team.
And I don't see why so many people found it hard to understand that this was going to happen. And I've got colleagues that I respect. The Lakers are going to miss the playoffs. They're going to stop. I don't think they're going to be in the top 2 in the West, but they could be anywhere. But with the way Houston's going, but that brings me to this point, Tony.
Yeah.
Teams like Houston and Utah, which have started slowly, are going to get better. And so the Lakers are going to have some struggles just because these teams are good. These teams might be as good, if not a little better than they are. New Orleans is going to get it going again. So it's going to be difficult, and so they're going to be natural basketball struggles in the Western Conference.
So at the beginning of the year, I said that they would win 50, and you laughed at me, and I backed away. I'm not sure I won't get the last laugh here. I'm not sure. LeBron James is only playing 35 minutes a game, and he's got great numbers. Again, he makes teams better, and in the West, when you say those teams are going to get better, a lot of them have receded a little bit. If LeBron James can carry young players who admire him so that they give maximum effort, they could show up around 48 to 50, don't you think?
Yes, Tony, yes. But don't overlook Rondo's absence if he's gone for a month. I mean, the last time he had one of these hand injuries, Rondo had led the Bulls with Dwayne Wade and that sort of makeshift team they had one year to a 2-0 lead, winning both games in Boston in the playoffs.
But
Rondo went out. I don't think the Bulls won again.
He'll
Rondo
be back. He'll be back. And LeBron's not going to miss every foul shot in the last 10 seconds. He's not. The Zion Williamson show was on again last night in Durham. Ooh. Granted, Eastern Michigan is not a scary opponent, but Williamson had 21 points and 9 rebounds. He shot 10 for 12 from the floor and had a few standardly amazing dunks. In 3 games, Williamson is averaging 25.3 points and 10.6 rebounds, and he is shooting 82% from the field, which means he's more accurate than Drew Brees. Last night, Mike Krzyzewski said of Williamson, quote, "It's more than how high he jumps, it's his incredible body control. It's crazy," unquote. Wilbon, are you getting swept up in Zion fever?
Yeah, Tony, and it takes me back to a time when I was really young, and I have not just studied but covered, decades of college basketball. I was very fortunate to see the likes of Jordan and Ewing, even Bird when I was in college. Larry Bird, when he and Magic sort of turned the industry. Tony, this reminds me, going further back than that, of Lou Alcindor and Bill Walton. Those were guys, and I know you know because you were courtside for Walton, at least, not Jabbar.
Yeah, I covered them.
But, Tony, they were the people that were so dominant. Their numbers were, insane. And Zion Williamson, without being 7'2", is having that sort of impact early on. We haven't got the ACC season yet, but early on, wow.
So people tell me that R.J. Barrett is the best guy out there, and my response is, which one is he? Because I'm watching this other guy. Every time the other guy gets his hands on the ball, I'm watching him. And I, too, like you, I tried to think back, who does he remind me of? And obviously,
how far do you go?
Well, I'll start with LeBron just in this sense. LeBron and Kobe, that everybody knew when they were this age that they were great players. I thought of Blake Griffin for the power. I thought of David Thompson for the elevation. But I'll give you a name that you may not have thought of because it's another sport. And that is Herschel Walker. Because this guy is a man. He is ready to play right now. And when you look at him, you go, he is different than the others.
Yeah, he's different.
Let's take a break. When we come back, how could Wilbon have gotten the National League Cy Young Award so wrong?
Because I got some sense and maybe others don't. Should Le'Veon Bell have a problem with his former teammates raiding his locker?
Well, man, you're going to run. The streak continues. What's first?
It's blank that Jacob deGrom won the NL Cy nearly unanimously.
It's predictable. We have talked about this for months. Keith Olbermann in August said he was going to win this. Look, I love Max Scherzer. I'll go to some numbers. He had a sparkling year. He was 18-7. He had a 2.53 ERA. He had 300 strikeouts. But people don't want to give a guy 3 Cy Youngs in a row. What DeGrom did on a bad team meant something. His ERA is ridiculously low. It's 1.70, and he closed well, Mike. He was like 5-7. He finished 10-9. He won his last 2 decisions, and I'm okay with this. I don't think it's the end of baseball. I don't.
Tony, I'm not with these people. I don't respect their judgment, actually, because I don't value what they value. I value winning the damn game more than the ERA. And therefore, it is analytical hijacking. These people have hijacked baseball. They want to impose their will and tell you what's important. I don't share most of and maybe none of their values, and it's absurd.
Next!
Villanova should feel blank about getting crushed by Michigan.
They should feel nostalgic. It's a bad loss. It's at home. It's 27 points. But if you go to Villanova, you just look up in the rafters, and you've got 2 national championship banners in the last 3 years, including the one against Michigan this past year. They lost 4 guys to the NBA. Villanova is not Duke. It's not Kentucky. They don't reload. They have to build a team. I'm sure Jay Wright saw this coming. They hadn't lost a game by double figures, Mike, in 108 games.
Tony, it's brand new. It's got to be a brand new team by definition. You mentioned the 4. Let's go through the 4 guys. Mikal Bridges was drafted now by the Philadelphia 76ers, but he's on the Suns. Dante DiVincenzo, but with the Bucks, playing with the Freak. Omari Spellman is one of 94 rookies down there in Atlanta on the Hawks, and Jalen Brunson is in Dallas, where they're also trying to build something. So it's brand new. I mean, what do people expect from Villanova this year? They get a pass all year, as far as I'm concerned.
And by the way, they're going to win the Big East. What's next?
Last one, Le'Veon Bell should feel blank about his former teammates raiding his locker.
He should feel finality. He is never going to be a Steeler again. They may have reunions. They're never going to invite him. This is worse than Ray Allen. What this was essentially was birds of prey going through his locker. He was the dead carcass on the side of the road, and vultures were stripping it bare. These guys wanted a piece of him because they know how good he is, but they hate him. He abandoned them. There's no love there. Michael, this felt to me like war spoils. That's what it felt like.
The question is, how should he feel?
Finality.
He should feel perversely proud. If he wasn't worth jack, they wouldn't have gone to get his stuff. You have to have some sort of stature, not just in the locker room, but in the business, for people to want to raid your locker and get your stuff and either give it to their neighbor's kids or put it on eBay. You got to have some size to you, Tony, some importance, so some swag, so perversely proud.
That's it. Eat your words, Wilbon. Let's take one last break, but still to come. Should Manny Machado rule out the Yankees after what Hal Steinbrenner said?
Yes, in a word. And does my man Charles Barkley have the golf credibility to analyze the Tiger-Phil match?
He doesn't have to analyze it. He just has to be funny. He just has to be charming.
I think we agree that Charles can do that.
He's perfect. Guy from the big Binghamton Northwestern game in Evanston. And then we'll be calling the game itself with Will Fleming at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN News. Tune in, darn it.
That's
Happy
right.
time.
Right here near the field house.
Happy 26th birthday, Trevor Story. Continuing our theme of shortstops with power, we moved from Francisco Lindor's 25th birthday yesterday to Trevor Story's 26th today. Story had just as big a bunch of numbers as Lindor this season. 37 homers, 108 RBI. And if you consider that Nolan Arenado is at third base in Colorado, that may be the best left side of the infield in the National League. Are you going to talk about the Cubs, Mike?
Well, I'm not going to trade anybody away for Javi Baez and Chris Bryant, and I ain't going to get rid of Chris Bryant. So I'll take my 2 guys.
That's okay. Happy anniversary, Cam Newton. On this day 3 years ago, you broke into an extended dab dance, much to the chagrin of several Titan defenders. That was during Newton's Super Bowl and MVP season. He fell off the last 2 years, but this season, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a personal best passer rating of his career, 101.2.
I must confess, I miss the dab. I just miss it. Nothing replaced it.
Happy trails to Hamidou Diallo's dunk attempt. The Thunder rookie went for the windmill on a breakaway last night, lost control of the ball, and ended up just throwing it off the backboard. To me, this looks like what happens when one of those dopey mascots goes off a trampoline and loses control of the ball and his body.
Except I'll remind you, there's no trampoline. This guy goes off the wood floor. How about that?
Okay. One omission. The Rockets plan to officially part ways with Carmelo. Yeah, that's on the clock.
Again.
We're running out of show. We go to the big finish. Yankees owner Hal Steinbrenner said Manny Machado's hustle comments, quote, ain't gonna sell where we play baseball, unquote. Your thoughts?
He still left the door open about his baseball people. I'm sure the numbers fanatics will come in. Baseball owners approved a 5-year contract extension for Commissioner Rob Manfred. Deserved?
That is a real endorsement for a guy who wants to change the game. Ernie Johnson will call the Tiger Phil match. Charles Barkley will be on the pregame. Will that make you watch?
What, no Kenny? I mean, what's up? Kenny and Shaq, huh? The Pistons beat the Raptors at the buzzer in Dwayne Casey's return to Toronto. You think he enjoyed that?
Reveled in it. Last one, college hoops tonight. Texas A&M at number 3, Gonzaga. Are you smelling upset?
Duke ain't the only team out there that's been great, averaging 112 a game, Gonzaga.
Out of time. Trying to do better than next time. I'm Tony Corn.